My guest today on Dashing Dan's Olympic Adventures for Aussie Home Loans to deal with anyone in Australia. They've got clients in every state and capital city. They do Zoom as well. The areas of expertise include purchasing a property, owner-occupied or investment, building a property portfolio, refinancing, cash out, debt consolidation, construction, pre-approvals, first home buyers, equipment loans, car loans, personal loans, and they've got over 25 lenders on our panel. Is one of the nicest people in sport, particularly in Olympic sport. There's no doubt about that. In my dealings with her over the years, she's always been very nice. And when I speak about this lovely lady, they always say what a nice person she is. She was lucky enough to go to a number of Olympic Games and also Commonwealth Games. She was there, of course, in Sydney in 2000. She made the semi-finals of the 200 metres at the Barcelona Olympics as well. She had success in the World Indoor titles in 1995. She had a few injuries that affected her career, but it was great, as I say, that she got back to be part of the action in Sydney in 2000. Now, a very successful coach. She's been an excellent commentator as well over the years. It's a great pleasure to welcome Melinda Gainsford Taylor to Dashing Dan's Olympic Adventures. Mel, great to have you with us.
Oh, lovely to chat. Thank you so much, Dan. Well, you forget half those things when you say them, and then you go, "Oh, yeah, that's right. I was an athlete once upon a time."
It has been a long time since you retired, but when you look back
Yeah.
at your career, you must be proud of what you achieved.
Look, yeah, absolutely. It's been interesting, since now, obviously watching the Diamond League and seeing all these young athletes coming through. And you think back and you just remember at the time you are definitely just in the moment, and it's about setting yourself that new goal that year of what you want to achieve. And I don't think you actually think about what you did in your career until you've finished quite a few years later. It's so funny how that is. In the moment, you're enjoying it. You're setting yourself all these targets that you want to actually achieve. But yeah, you get to, I think, later on when you're retired to actually look back and think, wow, that was just so much fun. And I was so lucky to be able to be running at that level for so long.
Have you thought about it a lot in recent times because of the death of your coach and close friend, and you called her a second mum, Jackie? She
Yeah.
died recently, and my condolences to you and your family and other people that she knew over the years and over the journey of athletics. But has it been forefront of your mind, your career, since Jackie's passing as well, Mel?
Oh, definitely, Dan. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's just, it wasn't really all that long ago. I think it's roughly about 6 or 7 weeks ago now. And the thing is, when Jackie passed away, I actually was with her at the time, which was, very emotional, but I feel very blessed that, when she decided that she didn't want to go on a ventilator, that I was actually there with her. And so I was there with her last breaths, which is, I'm going to make sure I don't cry here, which was
You can. That's what it's all
really,
about.
yeah, which was really, really difficult on so many levels. But at the same time, it was really, beautiful to be there. And actually, my mum passed away about 8 or 9 years ago. And it is incredible that I look back that I've had two women, and most important women in my life. I was there with them on their last breath. So in that side of things, I'm very lucky. But you are definitely right. I have been reminiscing like no tomorrow since Jackie's passed away, and I had to speak her incredible memories about what we actually did over that period of time. And I think back on how lucky I was to have her in my life and experience that the whole time as well, which was pretty amazing. But yeah, it is nothing better than looking back and reminiscing for sure.
What did she mean to you, not only as a coach, but as a person?
Well, the thing is that Jackie was just one of these people that, when she, I met her when I was 8 years old. So this is for people who probably don't know the story. I was 8 years old. I was living out on the farm on a farm, sheep and wheat farm in Narromine, New South Wales. And I started little athletics, and then I heard, that a big city coach was coming to town, and her name was Jackie Byrne. And I just remember, calling her up and going, "Hi," and I'm 8 years old. I go, "Hi, Jackie Burns. My name's Melinda Gainsford." I said, "Will you please coach me?" And she said, "You know what, Mel, I'll come down on Saturday and I'll make my decision." So Saturday came, and I was really excited, but very, very nervous. And I remember just running and running as fast as I could and showing off like no tomorrow. And I thought I'd blown my chances, when we did that. And but she luckily called me and she said, "Mel, I would love to coach you." And we were athlete and coach for 23 years together, and we went to 3 Olympics. So it is, quite a story. So she was, and I moved to Sydney to go to boarding school, and, being in boarding school, she was there as my mum, because my mum was out living in Narromine. So she was there, supporting me through my teenage years. And I went through some pretty difficult times there, had stress fractures in my shins for 2 years. And I look back and I think, if it wasn't for Jackie, I probably wouldn't have kept running and I wouldn't have got to run at the Olympics. So I'm very, very grateful for her.
You're a gutsy, confident 8-year-old to ring up a coach and say,
I
hello,
know.
or hello, Miss Byrne. I'd love you to coach me. 8 years old. That's amazing.
Yeah, I was pretty cheeky like that, I suppose. My parents made me do it. When I say made me do it, they're like, "Well, if you want to do this, Dale, you need to do that." So, and I did. And yeah, one of the things is it's funny throughout life, people have incredible influences on you. And, for her, she was, and this is the thing with coaches, it's just not about textbook coaching, it's about mentoring. It's about, you help develop this child or athlete to be able to cope with things in life as well. And I remember there was at one point I said to Jackie, and which is funny now because I get airsick, but I said to her, "Oh, Jack, I think I'd like to be a flight attendant when I grow up." And she said, "That's fantastic, Mel, but why don't you be the pilot?" And that was the thing. She just wanted you to be the best that you could be. Not there's anything obviously being a flight attendant, but she was one of these people who's like, "That's fantastic, but let's try and aim high." And that's exactly what she did for me as a coach as well.
Melinda Gainsford Taylor is my guest on Dashing Dan's Olympic Adventures for Aussie Home Loans. They've got over 25 lenders on their panel around Australia. So I take it you don't fly very much because of your air sickness, or if you do, are there protocols in place, Mel?
I actually do. I do fly, not as probably as much these days. I mean, I was funny. I was with Yana the other day because of Jackie's funeral, because she was also in our training group when Yana was 17, 18 years old. And she goes, "Mel, but you're flown around the world." I said, "I know, I get this, but I get motion sickness." So and it's unfortunately getting worse as I get older. So yeah, that wouldn't have been a good choice for me by any means.
So Narromine was where it all started for you. Why athletics? Now, a birdie has told me that your father was an outstanding cricketer. Is that right, in the country?
Yeah, yeah, that's
And
right. Yes.
obviously sport was in your blood, but why athletics?
Well, I just think what happened when I went to primary school, I ended up running at the school carnival, and I was in kindergarten. I'd beat kids a couple of years older than me. And there was this man called Gary that came up to my mum and dad. He was at Trengy Little Athletics. So Trengy is even a tinier town. Like Narromine has 3,000 people. Trengy has like 1,100 people. So it's tiny, but that's where they had the little athletics club. And he said, "Why don't you get Mel involved in little athletics?" And my parents came to me and said, "Would you like to do this, on a Saturday morning?" I said, "Sounds like fun to me." And I just absolutely loved it. So that's how I got into running. And, I did team sports too when I was at school. Like I played hockey and I played netball and other sports, but I just always knew running was what I loved. I love being in a team environment, but at the same time, I just loved, being responsible for my own choices in training, etc. And I could only blame myself you know, if I didn't perform at the level that I like to. So that's why I probably end up choosing more of an individual sport as well.
Why sprinting?
I just love running fast. I really do. I mean, there's just nothing like running quick. And this is what I say to my athletes, because as you said in the introduction, I now coach. And I actually coach kids from the age of 7 to 20. And some kids I've had in our group, for 10 years or 11 years. So I've seen them grow and develop. But there's nothing quite like learning how to run fast. and making it effortless. And there's a real art in that people don't understand. People don't understand how technique is so important for kids, people to be able to run faster. You know, the better technique they have, the more efficient they are. And a lot of those things you can instill into a child at a young age that can then help set them up for the rest of their life in no matter what sport they need to do, and help them with injuries, etc. So that's one of the things I love doing now, is helping them at grassroots level. So yeah, just, you know, sprinters, you go from 100. If you're not good enough in the 100, you go to the 200. Everyone says this. And over time, you choose an event that really suits you. So I wasn't really fast enough in the 100, but the 200 was definitely probably my favorite event.
Was it hard, though, to compartmentalise when you were training for 100 as well as training for 200? And you even, of course, won a few relays in the 400. So, again, your training had to be a little bit different for that as well, a little bit more endurance in the 400, isn't it?
Yeah, well, the thing is, I actually was looking at a lot of my programs the other day. I've kept a lot of them from the time that Jackie and I were training together, and we did a lot of volume. And that, I think, training techniques have changed over the years. There's no doubt about it. But we did do a lot of volume. But I do believe that you need to put training in the bank as such, so running in the bank. And I think that you need to get conditioned to do a certain amount of training as well. Like by the time I got to Sydney 2000, I was running 500, 600s, 55-second runs, and I was a 200-meter runner. So I was really fit. But then in saying that, I think as athletes get to the end of the career, they realize that less is more as well in training. And you've got to remember that you've had all those years behind you of putting it in the training bank as well. So it's, yeah, it's, you know, it's a balancing act. It can be at times, especially when you have injuries, etc. But yeah, I was happy with how things, you know, worked out in the end, and being able to run at Sydney Olympics was pretty amazing, because I did have that knee injury and they weren't sure if I could sprint again. So that was even more exciting in our hometown, running at the Sydney Olympics.
The great sprinter Melinda Gainsford Taylor is my guest on Dashing Gans Olympic Adventures for Aussie Home Loans. Let's talk about Sydney then. So how far out did you think, gee, I'm not looking like a chance of running here because of my body, or you were so determined that that didn't even enter your mind? I'm going to get there through hell or high water, no matter what shape I'm in physically, to make sure I'm there to represent my country at a home Olympics.
Well, it was definitely inspiring to know that you had the Sydney Olympics. After having my knee surgery and then getting back into shape again, that took a lot longer than I anticipated. I actually joke about how I finally got back running on the track, and I had 10-year-old kids beating me, and you know, they loved it because they went and told everyone at show and tell that that they were running much faster than me. It was hard. I have to be really honest with you. There was some really challenging times, and you know, a lot of athletes go through this. You have your highs, your lows, you have your good days, you have your bad days. You think, oh gosh, is this, you know, as much as you can will it, as much as you want it, sometimes your body just doesn't react to that the way that you want. But it was then that throughout that time, you realize how much you love it. And when you realize you love something that much, you really want to be a part of it again. So I was saying that actually when I made the Sydney Olympics was the most exciting time of my athletics career, because it was a really tough road back. And the thing is that there was just so much talent in women sprinting at the time. Like you say, for the 200 meters, for example, there was 5 of us all running under 23 seconds. 5 of us had all qualified. So I knew that if I wasn't in that top 3, that I potentially wouldn't be chosen to run at the Olympics. So I knew it was going to be a really tough gig. So yeah, luckily I got back to running. And that was another thing too. When you're injured, you don't get that feeling where you're running so fluid, and then when it clicks again, it is the best feeling ever when you run with very little effort. You know, you're running, you know, pretty quick. So yeah, it was a great Olympic. I was very lucky to be at my home Olympics. I just loved every moment of it.
Was it everything you thought it would be?
Yes, and more.
Yeah.
The first Like one of the things is that a lot of the athletes were having conversations afterwards about it. You know, some people found the crowd because like there was 110,000 people and
Yeah.
100,000 of them were Australians. Let's be honest, like
Yes.
it was packed with Australians. Um, and when you were announced in your race, so mine was obviously the first 100 meters, the crowd was deafening. Every Australian got so much you know, accolades and cheering and screaming. And I loved it. But I know that but, you know, I'd had a lot of experience too at that stage. But I know that other people found it a little bit overwhelming for them. But for me, it did really spur me on. And yeah, it was an incredible event and one I'll never forget.
Because I know back in 1998, you were going well at the Kuala Lumpur Commonwealth Games, and didn't you injure your knee and you were leading in that race? Did you think it was over?
Yeah. Yeah, that was a really tough time. That knee injury came about 6 weeks out of the Commonwealth Games, and I was in London and just warming up, and then my knee just gave way, so which was really concerning. So we came back to Australia and caught up with the Australian track and field team that were based in Darwin at the time, and worked like 24 hours a day, basically, nearly with the, you know, physios and masseurs and just trying to get this knee sorted. And it got to the stage, actually, Jackie said to me, you know, Mel, let's just go home. Let's go and get this looked at, have an arthroscope and sort out what this problem is with this knee. And I said, oh, Jack, I can't be sitting at home and just watching and thinking, what if? So once that happened, it got to the stage that we had this little bet that I had to run like 22:90. And in those days, Athletics Australia had made sure that anyone who was going to go and compete in a team had to do a pre-departure time anyway, which was 22:90. Otherwise, you didn't get to go. And I ran exactly 22:90. So I thought that was a good sign. So we pulled out the 100. I just concentrated on the 200 because the 100's just so explosive in comparison to the two. Not that the two's not, but it's obviously a lot more intense. And then being on the plane, my knee just blew up, you know, which happens. That's when you go get on planes, that can happen. And then we just decided to do the two. And then I actually ran really well through the rounds, but even before the final, my knee gave away again when in warm up. And then we were trying to flick things around, and well, the physios were onto it. And then unfortunately, I struggled once I come off the bend in KL. And yeah, so that was pretty devastating because I always dreamt of being a Commonwealth Games gold medalist. But sometimes I think things happen for a reason too. And, you know, I had a lot of support from a lot of people. I had the Sydney Olympics ahead of me, um, and I just, yeah, I got this real love, passion and drive back for the sport and just really wanted to run in Sydney.
Did you know
That's what
you're
I
in
did.
trouble going around the bend there? And the fact you were in trouble,
Yeah,
could your
yeah.
mind not get you over the line first? You just,
Well,
the
it's not
body
so
was just
much
in too
that
much
you
pain.
sort of, yeah, as you're running, you're going, okay, and then you keep on going, then you keep thinking, okay, it's only, you know, we're all good. It's 50 meters, 50, you know, as you're getting closer that you're like, right, no, it's all good, it's all good. Um, yeah. But then we found out later the reason why it was collapsing, I had bone cartilage that was floating around in there. And what happens is it get into a position and then it just gives away. And there wasn't only that issue, there was a whole lot of issues, like when they started drilling into the bone, all the bone started disintegrating. Like it was a bit of a mess, to be honest with you.
Now,
So I still got issues with it now, but I know what
you,
I can't sprint anymore.
you've still
Yeah,
got
I still
issues with it, have you?
yeah, yeah. There's a lot of things I can't do. Like I went to the gym today, I can't row because of, on the rower, because the knee going back and forth. There's a lot of things I still can't do because of it. So
So you'll never
it's
be
okay.
able to run at the pace you wanted to run. Can you still like go for a gentle jog or anything like that?
I can, yeah, I know. I've run a marathon and half marathons. So I can, yeah, I know I can do that. I can go slow, but when I try to pick up speed, even that's ridiculously slow. Because when I pick up speed, it just can't handle it. And then I get issues behind the knee and yeah. But as we say, it's like now I've got a bulging disc in my neck, bulging disc in my back. I go to the gym and I said, oh, I know what I can do. There's a lot of things I can't do. And that's all because of, you put in, what is it, 20 years, if not, yeah, of hard work you put your body through so much throughout that time. You pay for it later on, for sure. I really believe that.
As you
It was
said,
worth.
you've run marathons with all
Yeah,
the
one marathon.
one marathon. That's still more than most. That's a mighty
Yeah.
considering what your body, especially your knees, which are very important for running marathons, Mel. What they've been.
Yeah. It's funny, and I've run a few half marathons, but I cannot sprint. If I try to sprint, my knee just cannot cope with it at all. It's just really weird. Must be the biomechanics of trying to, get your knee up, trying to move over in that speed. It just can't handle it.
On Dashing
It's
Gowns
frustrating.
Olympic Adventures for Aussie Home Loans, Melinda Gainsford has joined me. She had an outstanding career, which included the Sydney 2000 Olympics. Now, Mel, you were talking about the Sydney 2000 Olympics. In fact, there are around 5 sprinters that had
Mm,
made the time in the 200 metres. I know you've had a lot on your plate, and there's been a lot talked about regarding selection discretion for the Australian team for this Olympic Games, some controversies in the 400 metres and especially in the marathon. Was
mm.
selection discretion an issue back in 2000? And if so, was it frustrating knowing that even though you might have had a time that was good enough to get you in, considering
Mm.
the number of people that were going to be allocated to that race or selected for that race or event, but you still mightn't get in because of selection discretion?
Well, sometimes that's why I think trials are really important. And most of the time when people, most of the time the selection criteria is based around the trials. Like the trials should play a really important part in those selections. So say for in the 200 meters, I can't remember the selection criteria by any means, but I think we're all under the impression if we got top 2 or top 3, we would have got into the team. But again, the selection criteria always changes over a period of time because you can have your discretionary areas, but there's things that generally they can tick off with those discretion areas, whether it's if they have potential of becoming top 8 in the world, if they've got potential of becoming a medalist, if they've got potential, or they can go head-to-heads, faster times. I mean, there's all things that in a selection criteria that they need to tick off to actually, even though it's discretionary, to actually select that athlete. But I haven't looked at this year's selection policy, I must admit.
No, but it's become a little bit of an issue for the sport. Is that, I know you probably can't comment too much on it, but is it a concern that has become the big issue for the Australian athletics team, considering they have some, and we've just had Tamsin Lewis on the show for Aussie Home Loans as well, considering she's very bullish about the chances, especially amongst some of the field events and also amongst some of the runners in the middle distance events, that we're all concentrating on the selection policy more than anything.
Yeah, well, it's that unfortunately, if you're not winning nationals and have a qualifier as such, then it does make it things difficult. And that's probably one thing that mind you, I say this now because a lot of the times are very tough, like especially in the sprints. To actually qualify in the sprints is really tough now. But I remember one year I missed out on a selection. And I remember when I did that is that I thought, I'm never going to put myself in this predicament again. I'm going to make sure that I'm going to tick that box, whether it was winning and going in with a Olympic standard, that I don't have to actually leave it up to anyone else to make that decision for me. And I think that should be a big goal for most athletes. Unfortunately, we can't all achieve that, but if you're wanting to be selected, make sure that you do that qualify, make sure you win trials, and then you don't have to leave it in the hands of someone else to make that decimission.
It's been a long
That was
time,
my
Mel,
experience.
since Australia have had a lot of success on the track at Olympic Games. 7 medals was their most recent best performance, and that was way back in 1968. Some superstars like Ralph DeBell and Maureen Caird and Raylene Boyle, also making the semi-finals in the 200. Peter Norman, another one in the semi-finals of the 200 metres, was Tamsin Lewis's father, Greg. So we had some stars there. Why do you think we've only managed to win the occasional gold medal and the occasional medal here and there in track and to a lesser extent in the field events over the last 50 years or so at the Olympics?
Well, I'd be interested in looking at the stats on how many countries were competing then in those years in comparisons to now. That would be interesting, may not be a big difference.
Right.
Like I've just been watching the US trials. I mean, oh my gosh, watching those trials, I've absolutely loved it. And one of the many reasons is seeing this talent, and obviously I'm watching the 1 and the 2. I'm watching all events, but the 100 and 200, and just how tough it is for them to make that Olympic team, and the joy that they got in those events in making the team. It wasn't about necessarily who got first, second, or third. It was them making a team. I just think that now, out there, like there's all these colleges that are offering these opportunities. You've got the Diamond League that's offering opportunities where you got money. There's so many areas now that a lot of these countries, it changes their life for these athletes. If they know they can get in track and field, if they can get into and especially with sprints too, if you show any talent, then there's a lot more opportunity there probably was way back then. So there's just there's so much depth. It's like it's insane. It's insane how many people are running fast, to be honest with you. But even in saying that, here in Australia, and I'm involved, more with our junior side of things with our athletes, there is kids that are running so quick at the moment. Like, it is phenomenal to think how quick some of them are running. And I hope here in this country we can see them grow and develop, and hopefully start matching it with the rest of the world for sure. I mean, one we saw is Sasha Zoya. How well is he doing?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I know he's now running for France, but he was Australian born and he's doing incredibly well. And I can't wait to see what he can do either in the future.
When you are training young athletes and you see someone going really well, not only in one event, but on a few occasions in the 100 and 200 metres, do you think, wow, I've got someone special here? Or do you keep your feelings to yourself a bit until you see a little bit more?
I think what I notice a lot, Dan, is that we can get really carried away with that. Like over, okay, say, how long have I been coaching? 16, 17 years. So I've seen like the Riley days come through. I've seen, Christy Edwards now. I used to coach Christy. She's up in Queensland now, with David, and I've seen her grow. So I've seen all the athletes that have been competing through there. And there are a few that have been exceptional at a young age, and we haven't seen them again. So sometimes I would like to encourage the athlete just to keep the love for it, to keep enjoying it. I saw an interview with Jackie Byrne actually the other day, and she made a great point. She said, she's obviously been successful at her own level, and her husband is coaching. I think she might be coaching too. Have successful athletes, but she kept saying you need to have the love for it. You got to continue to have the love for it, and you need to try all sorts of events too. So don't pinpoint yourself in a certain amount of events. And I thought that is just so true. And I think that if you can keep that athlete, if you've got that talent, just invested until they get through those teenage years and coming out the other side, then the world is their oyster, really. If they keep loving that sport, then hopefully they can go on and achieve what they can achieve as well. Because the hardest thing in sport and with athletes is they all develop at different times. Like, especially in sprints, it's all power based. So some will go through puberty earlier than others. Some don't do weights when they're younger, some do. So really, when they come out of being in the teenage years, becoming an adult, and then developing that strength and power, then that's when we get to see what their potential really is as well.
Melinda Gainsford Taylor is here for Dashing Gowns Olympic Adventures for Aussie Home Loans. Areas of expertise for Aussie Home Loans include purchasing a property, owner-occupied or investment, building a property portfolio, refinancing, debt consolidation, cash out construction, pre-approvals, first home buyers, equipment loans, car loans, and personal loans. Do you still get excited about the 100? Obviously, you've been watching the American trials and you're getting excited. How excited is probably a better question here, Mel. How
I get
excited do you
so
get
excited
watching the 100 and 200 metres, especially over the years, watching Usain Bolt and others, the way that they're breaking 10 seconds. Soon it'll be 9 seconds. They just fly, don't they? It is the big event, isn't it still?
It is a big event. It's incredible. Actually, I just started watching on Netflix Sprinters.
Right.
And it's about Noah Lyles and Sha'Carri Richardson, just to name two names. But yeah, it is. I just love it. There's nothing quite like it, especially the 100 meters. I mean, and it's interesting with both Sha'Carri and as well as Noah Lyles, neither of them had a particularly good start at the trials and both ended up winning. And we know with Usain Bolt, he didn't particularly have a good, start, but both phenomenal still in the 100 meters. But it's just, yeah, I just love it. It's one of those moments that everyone just holds their breath and you can't hear a pin drop, in the stadium. And there is something very special about it, I believe. Yeah. No, I loved watching it.
And I mean, the final's the interesting one, isn't it? Because you mightn't be at your absolute best going into the final as long as you qualify. And I mean, you say he's generally better than anyone, but you'd say, gee, he's not in as good a form as you want him to be.
Yeah.
In the final, it didn't matter, Mel, did it? He just blow them away.
So true. But that just goes to show about the mental strength as well.
Yeah.
And that's a really big factor as well with a lot of these athletes. You can put in all the hard work and, put in the sacrifices, etc. But if it comes down to that moment, it's about that mental strength as well. You need the capabilities, no doubt, but mental strength really plays a big factor. And a lot of the thing is, I think the hardest thing for sprinters is making sure that they don't tighten up. In a moment like that when it just means so much for them to be able to, win that medal or get that Olympic title. They just got to try and stay as relaxed as they possibly can.
You had a lot of success in indoor events. You won a silver medal in the indoor world titles in 1993. You then won it in 1995. Why was that, you think? Why do you think you had a great record indoors?
I think mainly because, for one, it was earlier in the season for the Australians. Like, it's great because we've had mind you, everybody else thinks it's crazy that we're trying to run fast. In the rest of the world thinks it's crazy we're trying to run fast in February and March. But I think that, you come in being in pretty good shape that time of the year. And I also think that because, running on an indoor track is interesting. It's like a velodrome. And I was just explaining this to my athletes the other day. And it's really strange when you're lining up, because normally you try to do high knees and that, to fire up your system to get out of the blocks. And when you do the high knees on an indoor track, you're actually going to fall over because it's at such an angle. So it's interesting. But one of my strengths was actually running bends. And in the 200 indoor is just one lap. So you'd basically have two bends. So I think that's really suited as well, for sure.
Now, didn't you, and I hope you don't mind me bringing this up, didn't you run out of a lane one day? I mean, I suppose that can happen.
Yeah, I did. Oh, it's not the first time, unfortunately. So I do this thing where you try to teach your athletes to hug the bend so you don't run further than you need to. But you're right, Dan. I went all the way to Paris for the World Indoor Championships. And I think that was 97, I think.
Right.
Anyway, went all the way over there, tried on the line, 30-hour flight over there, disqualified, had to come home. So it wasn't very good by any means. Yeah, so...
But you're very strong mentally, aren't you? Because you didn't let that affect you. You got back on the horse, for want of a better expression, and kept going. You've spoken about your knee injury in Kuala Lumpur and made sure you were right for Sydney. So you must be mentally strong. Has that always been something that has been part of Melinda Gainsford Taylor's psyche and makeup?
Well, I think it's just with experience in life over the years. First of all, I grew up on a farm, and, you had your good times and your bad times with droughts, and, you go through ups and downs, even, with your family about that sort of thing. And then I had a lot of injuries along the way, and it's called resilience. And that's why I think it's really key that we teach all our kids resilience. And, one of the things is that, that was the hardest thing. Even with my knee situation at Kuala Lumpur, I was feeling so terribly sorry for myself, like I was devastated. But then, you have your moments where you're down on yourself and you go, oh gosh, how did this happen? And then you wake up the next day and you go, okay, how am I going to fix this? And I really do believe that comes in time with experience. And, some might give up for sure, but it's definitely not what I wanted to do. I knew exactly what I wanted to do, and especially going into Sydney Olympics, I wanted to be part of that team as much and pleased that I could. But yeah, I think in life we need to be teaching everyone resilience, especially our kids, because unfortunately life's not easy. There is many times we have to fight on.
Correct. Now, you obviously
Yeah.
love the coaching. What do you love most about the coaching, Mel?
Uh, I, what I love most about coaching is just making a difference with these kids. And I'm not talking about, winning national titles or making Australian teams. Like there's just can be little things that are very simple. I had a boy the other day who came with me, and he's been coming for, I don't know, about 6 weeks, 7 weeks. And then, he had a really short stride pattern, and all of a sudden he's lengthening his stride pattern. Or, the other kid that will come to me and they'll have a straight arm when he runs. And then I teach him to bend his arm, and that makes a big difference. So, yeah, I just love trying to help these kids and then hopefully give them the confidence that they really need. And a lot of it's not just confidence in track and field or in their own sports, because I coach kids from all sports. It's sometimes just their own confidence they have within themselves. It's really important. I've had kids who've been bullied at school and they've come along and trained, and them then running well at the athletics carnival has given them a lot of confidence, things like that. So that's what I love about it. I love working with kids and love helping them trying to achieve what they really want to achieve, no matter how big or small that goal is, for sure.
How much did Jackie's coaching help you in your coaching?
Oh, enormous amount. And like even now, and that's one thing I'm gonna be so devastated about now, is that, I used to always call her up. She became my mentor coach as well. And I would ask her questions and, things that, I feel what weren't working as me as a coach, like what can I do? What's something else I can try to make sure that happens? So I really will miss that. But, one thing that Jackie did teach me, that I feel like that I'm also doing with our group, is that she tried to make she made our coaching environment a really happy place to be. And she had people within our training group were all sorts of levels, but she tried to make it a really fun environment. And that's one thing that I try to do, is to create a really good culture within our group, that when they come, that they all feel as important as each other, and also they can enjoy the experience. So I've still got girls now who are turning, they've got their HSC coming up. They're still turning up. They're not running at a national level by any means, but they're turning up, training. They want to do well for their school events in their last year of school. They've been coming to me for about 5 or 6 years, and that just gives me such joy that they're being a part of it and still enjoying it. And hopefully even afterwards, hopefully they can still keep coming, or they know it's a safe, happy place for them to come as well. Yeah, and be fit and active.
Now, Melinda, I mentioned earlier about your father, Brian, being an outstanding cricketer, I believe an excellent wicketkeeper. I think he represented New South Wales country. So there was great sporting pedigree there. Your
Yeah.
daughter, Gabriella, was 10, and she was the fastest 10-year-old in the country. Has she
Yeah.
continued with her running? And I know you've got a son, Nick, who I met briefly before. Is he running as well? Have you encouraged that, or you just allowed them to do whatever they want to do?
Well, it was always down to what they would like to do. They're actually both quite quick, to be honest with you. Nick is very quick, but yeah, he wasn't really keen in actually doing track and field. But Gabriella has been running, yes. So she's been running, as she said, 10. She used to run against Tori when she was 10. Tori Lewis, I'm talking about, for everyone who's listening. So I've seen Tori grow up, because Gabrielle used to race against her all the time through the Catholic school system. And Gabriella's still running now, which is fantastic. She's loving it. She was playing netball there at one stage as well, and unfortunately did her ACL.
Mm.
And so that was about 3 years ago. So she's got back into her running now, and yeah, really loving it. And she's now, she got 8th at nationals this year in the under 20s. And then she's still really keen to keep going when she's going into the open. So I think that's fantastic. Yeah, I'm always there supporting her in that as well. So just as long as she keeps loving and enjoying it. She's a really hard worker, I must admit. She's pretty self-motivated, which is excellent, because I wouldn't be the one pushing her, I can tell you. So she keeps the love for it as well, and that's great.
Did she get the self-motivation from her mum?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's just always in her. I don't know. Sometimes I think people are just born with things. So yeah, there's no way in a million years I'd be too exhausted if I was trying. There's no way I'd be trying to make anyone train. I think if they want to train, they've got to be there. So I just try to make it as easy as possible to give them options, and hopefully it's up to them, well, it is up to them to turn up as well. So
Would you ever coach her?
oh, I have been coaching her.
Oh, you
Yeah, all
have?
the way
Oh,
through.
okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
sorry. Yeah.
yeah, that's okay. No, not at all. She's also working with another coach at the moment, but yeah, I've been coaching her most of the time anyway. So yeah, it's good. It's
Is
really
it
good.
is it different coaching your daughter than coaching someone else, Mel?
Probably much harder on her than I would be my own athletes. I'm a bit softy, my athletes, interesting.
I
Because
could
yeah,
imagine that.
not that
I
tough
think you'd
on
be
them really.
very positive, wouldn't you? I mean, I don't think
I am
to
positive,
say,
and I like,
yeah. I,
yeah.
I
No,
don't
I
think
am really
today's today to
positive.
rant or rave, is it? I think today's today to not mollycoddle them, but sort of give them positive feedback to ensure they keep going
Yeah.
better.
And and two at times I go, a lot of the times, and I mean, that's the harder thing when you've been an athlete. You know what you need to do to be able to achieve what what you want to eventually achieve. And then sometimes my athletes might be doing things I'm thinking, well, that's not going to help your outcome. But I put it out forward to them. I go, well, if you're going to do this, this, and this, then it's going to be detrimental to your training. If you want to do that, that's your choice. But then when it comes to the time you're running nationals and you don't run well, then you'll understand why. So I will do it more that way rather than saying you have to do this. And then sometimes you got to learn from your mistakes. That's the thing. You make mistakes, you need to learn from it. So, and that's the best way to learn from it. No matter how much someone tells you something, unfortunately, sometimes we don't listen, and then we have to learn the hard way.
Melinda Gainsford Taylor's with me for Dashing Dan's Olympic Adventures for Aussie Home Loans. They can deal with anyone in Australia. They've got clients in every state and capital. And like Mel and I are doing, they can talk to you on Zoom as well. Back to 2000, if I can, Melinda, and you were in the relay. It was an outstanding team. Freeman, Lewis,
Yeah,
Gainsford, Taylor, and Paris. What a good team that was in the
it was a good
400
team.
metre relay. I mean, you must have thought, gee, I'm walking on air with the crowd getting behind us and the back end of what was a great Olympics in 2000.
It was a great Olympics. It's funny. I was talking to my athletes the other day about the 400 and how I did the 4x4. And it all came about when I remember I was in Gothenburg at the World Championships. I think that was in 95, to be honest with you. And the coaches then came to me and said, Mel, we're thinking of you running a 4x4. I said, excuse me? And they're going, we're thinking, well, and I was like, you want me to run a 4x4? Yeah, we think you'll be great because you're running, low 22s or mid 22s. So you'd be great at the 4x4. And I said, do you think I can do this? And they go, yeah, you can. So anyway, we did it and we ended up winning a bronze medal at the World Champs. So it was pretty damn special. But I'll never forget being so insanely tired. Like I can't tell you how exhausted because I'd run, I think 3 100s, 3 200s. I can't remember if we did a 4x1 actually that year and a 400. I'll never forget everyone out afterwards was out having a party because we'd finished.
Yeah.
And I was too tired. I had to go home. We won a bronze medal at the World Champs. So it was pretty amazing. It was absolutely. So it was Renee Puechka, Kathy Freeman, Lee Naylor, and myself. It was a pretty special one.
And of course, Lee Naylor has a son, Max Holmes, who's pretty quick as
Yes.
well, who's tearing it up for Geelong and the footy, going beautifully, isn't he?
Oh yeah, he's going amazing. I speak to Lee virtually nearly every day.
Right.
And yeah, Max is extraordinary. You know what I loved was it last year at the grand final and they had the fastest man in AFL, the race.
Yes.
And he smashed him in the first 10 meters. It was beautiful to watch. Yeah, he's pretty quick himself. He was a great athlete.
He could have actually done
Great athlete.
athletics, couldn't have he? But obviously decided
Oh
on.
no, he did. No, he used to run 400s and 4 hurdles. Yeah, he's a national champion. So he was doing a lot. He really loved track and field. He was an excellent track and field athlete. Yeah. So but then obviously he's incredibly talented in AFL and he's doing incredibly well. We're really proud of him. Really happy for him.
He's having an outstanding year for the Cats. Now, in that 4
Yeah.
by 400 metre relay team in Sydney, were you confident
Yeah.
of doing well, despite all
Well,
the
of
pressure?
course you're always confident to do well. Absolutely. You know, you get into a final and, you know, you give it everything you've got, for sure. Absolutely.
It was a pretty good team, as you said. I mean, where did
Yeah.
you run in that race?
I ran third leg in that race.
Righto. And
Yeah.
Kathy ran at home. Yep.
Yeah, she ran at home. She was in fourth position.
What did you think of her winning that race in the 400 meters? How nervous were you? I've asked a lot of her colleagues or team members that were part of that team in 2000 what it was like watching her, considering she was expected to win and the pressure was on, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think that everyone would talk about the 400 meters there in Sydney. And, you know, we were in the stand watching it and there was so much pressure on her to actually perform. You know, she had the whole country on her shoulders, let's be honest. I mean, the fact that she lit the cauldron, which was a surprise to everyone, and she looked amazing when she did that too. And then went into the 400 meters and, you know, she absolutely smashed it. And you could just see, and I think she's used the phrase herself, the absolute relief afterwards, but it'll always be one of the most iconic sporting events in this country for sure.
So you were nervous like everyone else?
Yeah, of course, very nervous. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it was a fantastic performance. So at the end of 2000, you decided that was it. You'd achieved everything you needed to achieve, or were you still keen to keep going?
Yeah, look, I nearly tried again I was in Nice when you know, I thought I was so inspired by the Sydney Olympics. I thought, okay, I was going to try then for, I think it was world champs that year. And then I went over to Nice and pulled a hamstring and I just went, oh gosh, I think my body's just telling me enough's enough. So that was probably when I decided that, yeah, it was time for me to retire. And I also, too, my husband and I had been together for quite a while and we wanted children. So it was probably really good timing. And then we had Nick in 2002. So the year later after that. So, yeah, it was probably really good timing. I think Jack was trying to encourage me to start running 400s.
Right.
And I said, nah, it's all good, Jack. It's all right. I was pretty exhausted by then. So, I didn't regret retiring. It was really the right time for me.
It was a great career, Melinda. I mean, it stretched for a long, long time, starting as an
Yeah.
8-year-old, and you've given a quarter of your life up until then to sprinting. I mean, eventually it's time to do something else, isn't it?
Absolutely. Like when I ran the 200 meters in Sydney and I made the final, like making a final is a really big deal in track and field. And I truly believed I could have got a medal. I knew I was capable of getting a medal, but unfortunately that wasn't the case. I came sixth and now I moved up to fifth because of Marion Jones. So I do remember there was a moment there that Jackie and I was sitting at the warm-up track and which is now called Sydney Olympic Park, where a lot of people come and are competing, where we have nationals at times, sometimes there. And we just sat there at the 200-meter mark and we were one of the last events of the night. And I said to Jackie, it was so worth the effort. Like it was just yeah, the amount of work I had to do to get back to actually being there was so full on. But the fact that, you know, I'd made an Olympic final, this is before the final, we said it. I said it was so worth the effort of putting it in and not giving up on it for sure. So I think by then, and then I thought, okay, that was a massive effort trying to make those Olympics. So I thought my body's trying to start telling me things.
And we know, Mel, that sprinting events are very hard to win, very hard to win a
Yeah.
medal. Are we
Yep.
a bit too focused in this country and probably around the world that unless you win a medal, it's seen as a failure? If you make a final, considering all the people that are running nowadays and how good they are, and they're all getting under the required time and breaking
Yeah.
records left, right, and centre, that if you make a final in an Olympic event, it's a darn good effort, especially in the sprints.
Oh, yeah, in track and field itself, it's a really, really big deal. And for all those reasons you've just said. Um, you know, and the thing is, that's the hardest thing. The hardest thing for any athlete is to make a final. And then once you're in a final, anything can happen. But you can't, if you don't make that final, obviously you can't put yourself in a position where you can win a medal. So, um, yeah, for me to be able to do that, yeah, it is let's be honest, making an Olympic final in any event, to be honest with you. But yeah, in sprints is it's a pretty hard gig, and if you do it, you should be really proud of yourself, I believe.
Now, obviously, since retirement, you've been coaching. You've done a lot of commentary. You'd be very good at that. I've heard you're outstanding. And you also love the Manly Sea Eagles. Now, down here in Melbourne, they'd be like the Carlton or Collingwood, and unless you're a Manly Sea Eagle supporter, they're probably hated, aren't they, in the NRL? Why Manly? I believe you're on the board there, and how important was it to be involved in the board, and what did you think you brought to the table there, considering your background as an elite athlete?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I was on the board. Oh gosh, it was a long time ago. I think I left in 2011. I
Right.
can't remember how many years I was on. 3 years, maybe 3 years. And I was part of what we call the Eagles Angels. So the Eagles Angels, Manly were really struggling financially at one stage, and Max Delmage put some money into the club, and then the Eagles Angels were formed as well. Like, so the whole group of women on the Northern Beaches who love Manly Sea Eagles, like Sarah Hare was one of them, Lane Beachley was another one of them, Wendy Harmer.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many, I could just keep going, Kerry Podhurst. So anyway, we all Deb Watson. So we all got together and helped raise funds and awareness for it. So then from that, then I was asked to go on the board. And I think just a lot of the things, looking things from an elite athlete point of view, also from a PR point of view as well, with sponsorships, things like that you could bring to the table. It was very interesting being on the board. Just a lot of the things, we can see things in the media and that with talking about, clubs, whatever it is. But when you get, on a board level, you see things from a whole different perspective, actually. And it was very interesting being on the board throughout that time, for sure.
Do you think the comp and the team, Manly, are in good shape? They've improved a bit from recent years, haven't they?
Yeah, look, they have. I think they're looking really good this year, I have to admit. I think they've been, on the improve, and they've had some really good solid games leaning forward. Where I coach now, because unfortunately our track at Narrabeen
Right.
is not open, so we're on the local grass area. So I'm down there with we've got a track, the academy down there has put a grass track, so we're working around a lot of the younger Sea Eagles players, younger kids, whether it's under 20s downwards. So they've got some talent there's no doubt, and I'm seeing what sort of work they're doing. So they're really working on their development side of things. I've actually had a few athletes that have trying out for a lot of those teams as well. So, they're really putting in the effort, which is good. But yeah.
Absolutely. Well, Melinda, it's been a great pleasure chatting to you. As I've always said, one of the nicest people to speak to, an outstanding career as an Olympian, and winning an indoor world championship as well, and great success at the Commonwealth Games, and achieved a lot as a coach, as a commentator, and of course as a board member, as we've just spoken about with the Manly Sea Eagles in the NRL. I wish you all the best moving forward with your coaching, and Gabriella with her career as well in running. And thanks so much for joining me on Dashing Dan's Olympic Adventures for Aussie Home Loans, who've got over 25 lenders on their panel. They deal with anyone in Australia, and they've got clients in every state and capital, and they do Zoom as well. Thanks again for joining me.
Thanks so much, Dan. Take care.